Hello guys, welcome back. I'm Eloise. So as you guys probably know, I'm always testing new fragrances, ones that pique my interest, ones that other YouTubers sometimes talk about, and ones that you guys suggest in the comments to some of my videos. And when I'm testing fragrances, sometimes I know right off the bat that it's a no. Sometimes I feel like it's a maybe, and sometimes I order a full bottle soon after I test the fragrance. So I thought it would be fun to make a video and talk about some fragrances that I decided are full bottle worthy for me, from my perfume collection. And some of them I have bottles on the way. Some of them are on my wish list. I haven't ordered yet. A few of them I already have full bottles of, but they've recently been added to my collection. So I have 7 here, and if it makes the video too long, then I'll cut it down to 5 or 6. But let's dive in and see how many we can get through. So the first one is by Les Indemodables, and this is Rose de Jamal. And this is a 2019 release. The nose behind this fragrance is Antoine Lee. So this is a beautiful rose fragrance. I fell in love with this immediately. It's such a beautiful unisex, maybe even masculine rose fragrance. And what I get with this is this really beautiful, dark pink, almost velvety, creamy rose that has notes of cedarwood and lavender. And I think there's a mint note in here as well. And there's something creamy about it, almost as if Ylang was part of the composition, although it's not listed as a note. It's a green rose, and there's a woody aspect to it. So it's a woody, green, dark pink, very, very good quality rose fragrance. It's obvious that this is a quality fragrance, as I think most of the Les Indemodables fragrances are, very high quality ingredients. So this has 5.5% rose absolute oil in it. It's absolutely stunning. There's a little bit of a green component that gives it like a little sparkle, and it's woody at the same time. There's something a little dark and full about the rose itself. It feels like you can smell the green stem as well as the petals. And then this beautiful contrasting note of the lavender with the woody notes. Really, really pretty. I like this a lot. So this one focuses on the rose. So this fragrance is a solely floor, focusing on rose, and then a few other notes to sort of contrast and support the rose. But I think it's a gorgeous take on a rose fragrance. Very nice. This is on my wish list, so I will write to Santa and maybe I will get this for Christmas. I did not order this yet, so this is on my wish list. So Les Indemodables, Rose de Jamal. So the next two are the heavy hitters here. Oh, and by the way, technically speaking, I should be spraying the skinny part of this strip, I know. But I'm spraying the bigger part because it's more surface area. I watched Persiles in one of his live stream videos. One of his subscribers was asking why he was spraying the skinny side of the strip, and he explained that technically this is the part that you are to spray, and then you can bend it and place it down, but we're not doing that today. So I am going to spray the larger part. And if I don't have a spray bottle, then this is made to conveniently dip into the tester bottle, which we'll do in a few minutes. So this next one is Perverso by Baruti. Wow. So this is a dark, boozy, thick fragrance. It opens up with this dark coffee, like nutty coffee note that's boozy. And a few minutes in comes this dark chocolatey component to the fragrance. The coffee comes off so dark. The cacao is a dark chocolatey cacao. There's a nutty component to this. There's a rum note in here, so it's boozy as well. So this is described as hedonism in a bottle, and it's also described as a unisex gourmand fragrance. And it is gourmand, but a dark gourmand. So don't think gourmand like a sugary cookie, vanilla, cake gourmand. This is gourmand in the sense of dark coffee, cacao, boozy, chocolatey, almost like a dark molasses gourmand fragrance. Can I say dark enough? I mean, this is full-bodied, dark, deep, strong fragrance that projects and lasts a very long time. So this strong opening of this dark coffee with this dark cacao and the boozy notes, it turns into this syrupy, thick, almost like molasses type of fragrance. It's very resinous and the tobacco comes through. So it's dark, it's smoky, it's resinous, it's very deep, and it's really, really rich. I don't know how many women would think that this might be too masculine or masculine leaning. It's definitely dark and deep, and you have the tobacco and you have the boozy and the dark chocolate. So it's definitely not a feminine fragrance, but in my opinion, it's unisex, and this is on my wish list. So I was testing this one night and I got it on one of the shirts that I was wearing that I then picked up hours later, and I could still smell it on the shirt, and the shirt smelled like this very rich, almost like molasses syrup that you would use on top of pancakes. So I think this is great. I think it's perfectly unisex, and it's a very rich, dark gourmand, nutty, tobacco, coffee, chocolatey fragrance that has the consistency of a molasses. So it's very rich. So this is on my wish list, Baruti's Perverso. So the next one is also by Les Indemodables, and this is Vanille Havane. So this has been on my wish list for a bit of time, and I was testing this again last week. Oh, this is such a great tobacco vanilla fragrance. So good. It's so perfectly blended. It's not too sweet. The vanilla doesn't come off too sugary. The tobacco is also done in such a way that it's such a unisex fragrance. So this is a 2020 release, and the nose behind this is Antoine Lee as well, like Rose de Jamal. So this to me opens up really boozy with a touch of sweetness. And then within minutes, I get this cacao chocolatey component that comes through. And it maintains a nice, dark, syrupy sort of consistency with the vanilla never getting too out of hand or too sweet or too gourmand. So the chocolate maintains this dark chocolate element, and the booziness keeps it dark. I mean, the color of the juice says it all. So good. And then as it dries down, I feel like it slowly transitions to a beautiful vanilla tobacco fragrance. So smooth, a little smoky. I get a little tinge of that jasmine in the background. It doesn't come through too much, but as it dries down, you do get something a little floral that keeps this interesting. But for the most part, this is a vanilla tobacco fragrance that dries down a little ambery, that has a little speckle of jasmine. This is so great, and I think it's obvious that these are high quality ingredients. It's a very, very well-made fragrance. So because this hasn't dried down yet, I'm still experiencing a lot of that cacao, a lot of the chocolatey notes. I think it's once it fully dries down that it becomes more vanillic and tobacco and ambery. But right now I'm still getting a lot of the chocolate notes in here, which are so good. And the tobacco is not too strong in this fragrance. So it's not too much vanilla, it's not too much tobacco. It's just right. So this one I don't have yet, also on my wish list. And this is Vanille Havane by Les Indemodables. And this one, by the way, I think has a flanker and extrait version. I think this is the Eau de Parfum. So I would be curious to see what that smells like, but I think I'm going to be ordering this one and then maybe get my nose on the extrait at some point. So good. Okay, so the next one is also one that I loved immediately. This is Raw Gold by Thomas de Monaco. So this fragrance has 2 release dates. One in 2020 when Thomas de Monaco released a limited number of Raw Gold perfume bottles, and they were a completely different shape. I'll put it up here in the screen so you can see. They were a completely different shape, and each bottle was numbered, and there were a certain number of bottles that were released, and so I guess it was a limited edition fragrance. And then in 2023, the fragrance was released with a completely new style bottle, and from what I read, also reformulated. in the sense that the fragrance was made maybe less animalic. I think there were some animalic notes in the original release. So I don't know what the 2020 Raw Gold smells like. So this one is the 2023 release, and it's considered an oriental woody fragrance. And to me, this opens up with this boozy, sweet, almost syrupy consistency. And as it dries down within minutes, it becomes this raw honey. It's a honey that has a sweetness to it. It is a sweet fragrance, but it has woody notes that kind of cut through the sweetness. So I think it pushes up to the line where for me, it would become too sweet. This is not too sweet. It reaches the limit. And I think the type of sweetness is not a sugary, vanillic sweetness. It's more the sweetness that you would imagine in raw honey. It really does come off like raw honey with a touch of like an apricot smell in there. Even though apricot is not a note, to my nose, I pick up a little bit of something fruity in here, and I'm imagining an apricot. So the fragrance literally gives me this photorealistic imagination of this gooey, raw, golden, syrupy honey and this dark, ambery colored, orangey, yellowish apricot that's ripe, a ripe apricot. Right after the initial opening with that boozy, syrupy sweetness comes this iris. It's almost lipsticky. And I think in the 2020 release, I think Fragrantica has lipstick note listed. I'm not sure. But there's definitely an iris that comes through that gives almost like this lipsticky cosmetic touch to the fragrance. It's really, really interesting. But despite the iris, it's still overall this raw honey with this tinge of apricot. It's so good. And then as it starts to dry down, I've worn this a few times on skin for the day at work, it gets woody and there's patchouli that comes through, but it's not an overwhelming patchouli. It's not overly obvious. It's not an earthy patchouli. The fragrance remains this like raw honey with the woody aspects and that apricot that I sense as it dries down. It could be coming from the Davana. There's a note of Davana in here, which is known to be fruity, floral, that can have a component that smells a little like plum or apricot. So maybe that's what that is that I'm picking up. But it's definitely there. It's definitely something that's sort of brightening the composition, this like apricot that I'm picking up. It's brightening this raw honey, woody, patchouli, iris. But all in all, for those of you who never tried this, Raw Gold is such a fitting name because I really do get this raw, syrupy honey. And it's absolutely delicious. Very pretty. The iris stops this from being like a straight up honey that would be too sweet to wear. And the woody notes and the patchouli round it out. So when I say honey, don't think something that's sticky, sweet, and not wearable. It's a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. And I think the iris does a lot here. And so does the patchouli and the woody aspects. But overall, on top of these other notes is this really nice honey. So this is also on my wish list, Raw Honey by Thomas de Monaco. So the next one is from the house of Frederic Malle, and this is Idis Poudre. I have been after this fragrance for a really, really long time, and I do own a full bottle. I did order this. I think this is so beautiful. I love this. It's like a fine milled soap. And I know that that's not a scent profile for everyone, but I personally love this and am sometimes in the mood to wear something powdery and fresh and feminine and clean. But this is more than just a clean soap, in my opinion. So this is a 2000 release. So this has been around for a while. And the nose behind this is Pierre Bourdon. And this is basically, if you look at the official website, it is a tribute to the aldehydic floral fragrances of the 20th century. So aldehydes is a big part of this. And even though iris is in the name, it's not only about iris. There's a rose and a violet in here. So I do get this beautiful, delicate floral combination. The rose is not really coming through as much as the iris and the violet. And the aldehydes are definitely center stage here. And you also have tonka bean, which is giving a little bit of sweetness, but this is mostly a very delicate floral fragrance. It's a little powdery and aldehydic that doesn't come off heady or overly floral because the violet and the iris are just so beautiful and delicate. It comes off like a finely milled, high quality soap that has some floral touches. So I know that's not for everyone, but like I said, I really do enjoy fragrances like this from time to time, and I absolutely love the way this is made. I love the combination of notes. It's not too powdery. The aldehydes are not overwhelming either. I like the way the aldehydes and the musks work together. And this lasts on my skin for the entire day that I was at work. So 8-9 hours later, I was still getting wafts of this, even though not as strong as the first 5 hours, let's say. But it dries down to what I would say is a slightly floral, clean, powdery, musky fragrance that I really enjoy. The aldehydes subside as the fragrance is drying down, but I think this is absolutely beautiful. And this will be on my list of powdery fragrances. It does have a little powderiness to it. So that's Iris Poudre by Frederic Malle. And I do have a 1.7 ounce bottle of this in my collection. So I'm enjoying this one. So the next two I absolutely love. They're both chypre fragrances. Let's start with Labo's Ylang 49, which I would say is a hidden gem. So like a lot of you probably know, Labo has a strange way of naming their fragrances because they don't always match what the fragrance smells like. So I often walk into the Labo boutique that's around the corner from where I live, and they know me by now, and I'm testing and I'm spraying and I buy samples. And this one I did actually purchase the official sample from their store and then did follow up by purchasing a full bottle because I really, really like this. But what I will say is that every time I walked in to Labo, I would have never pegged Ylang 49 for being a chypre fragrance, like a throwback to the old style chypre. I would have never thought. It's not a Ylang fragrance. It's not a tropical fragrance. And even though there is Ylang in here, and that note is used in a lot of chypre fragrances, this is not a Ylang centered fragrance. This is a chypre fragrance that's been around for quite a while. I think 2013 or 2015. I can't recall right now. So good. The oak moss in here is really prominent all the way to the dry down, so it's really a long-lasting and predominant part of the fragrance. It's this beautiful chypre that opens up really citrusy and mossy, but it's really green. So it comes off really green and clean and mossy and citrusy. And it's really unisex because of that, and it could even be considered masculine leaning. Not in my opinion. In my opinion, this is 100% unisex, and I love this fragrance for myself. But it's really green, so there's a big green component. And there's this beautiful gardenia that makes its way through right after the opening. And there's a patchouli note in here. And it just comes off mossy and green with this gardenia peeking through and this citrus element to the fragrance. So you have a tiny bit of sweetness in here, and the gardenia is a Tahitian gardenia. And then you do have that touch of ylang, but mostly it's this mossy green type of chypre with this Tahitian gardenia that peeks through. It's really good. It's fresh, it's clean. So I would say that it's a green, fresh, mossy type of chypre that, in my opinion, is a nice everyday fragrance, which I will contrast with the next one that I'm about to talk about, and that is Amouage's Jubilation 25 Woman, which I also have a full bottle of already. I just received it 3 days ago, I think. This is absolutely stunning. So it opens up citrusy and a little green. It's almost like there's something like an herbal touch to it. And it has this thick, full-bodied consistency. And you have this incense that runs through the fragrance. And then this beautiful rose ylang ylang combination starts to come through, and it's so creamy. To my nose, it almost gets a little powdery. Maybe the rose gets powdery. And then as it dries down, you have this beautiful, creamy floral fragrance that's balsamic. There's myrrh in here, and that incense is running through. And the backdrop is the oak moss. It's absolutely stunning. This is a beautiful chypre fragrance. And if you guys saw my video on MDCI's chypre palatin, I love that. And I did say that that's probably one of my top fragrances in my collection. This one, I think, surpasses chypre palatin in terms of a chypre fragrance. This is gorgeous. And there's something about this fragrance that I pick up that I don't think I heard anyone else describe. I get something of a cosmetic, like lipsticky note as this dries down. Iris is not listed. Sometimes iris, violet, those sorts of florals go lipsticky or give a cosmetic nuance to a fragrance. So I don't know where it's coming from. Maybe it's just simply that the rose goes powdery together with the ylang ylang. But there's something almost lipsticky that I get as this gets close to the dry down. I've worn this a lot. I think I'm pretty much done with the sample and can delve into the full bottle that I have. I love this. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of Amouage's older fragrances, so I hope they don't discontinue this. I think there was a time that they were making this in an extrait version, and the only version that it came in was in the extrait version. I'm not sure, but this one and the one that I own is the Eau de Parfum version, and it's absolutely stunning. So to me, this was definitely full bottle worthy, but you have to like chypre fragrances. You have to be into that genre and that scent profile. I can appreciate this type of fragrance. I like it. And Labo's Ylang 49 is also a chypre. And I will say that the oak moss in that fragrance is maybe stronger than it even is in Jubilation 25. When Jubilation 25 dries down, I kind of lose. The oak moss is there, but when I compare it to Ylang 49, it's stronger even in the dry down of Ylang 49. So Ylang 49 remains very green and mossy even in the dry down, and you have that gardenia that peeks through. And that's why I think that fragrance could really be enjoyed by men. It's unisex, but I think because it's so green and mossy that it would make a great man's fragrance. This one is more floral and creamy, and there's something almost a little powdery to it. And there is something green, and you have the incense. It's so complex, it's thick, it's balsamic, it's absolutely stunning. But when it fully dries down, I don't get as much oak moss as in the opening and the midsection of the fragrance, but it's stunning. So this one, full bottle worthy, in my opinion, for sure. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have smelled these fragrances and what you think of them. Your comments are always appreciated. Until next time, bye, guys.